Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. My name is Sean, and this is Season 6. Can you believe we're going to hit 5 years during this season, or actually right after it? We've been doing this for 5 years.
Does it feel like 5 years, or does it feel like 100 years?
I'm not sure if it feels like 2 or 3 or 100. But I am surprised that 5 years has gone by already.
Yeah, no joke. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. With all the stuff that's happened since then, and just all the guests that we had on the show, and all the topics that we've covered, I think it's pretty incredible. You know, I think one of the principles that we were following was that be consistent so we can publish once a week. And I think that's really been key, because we've gotten into some topics that we may not have been thinking about, but we're like, all right, we got to get an episode up, so let's tackle this one.
And it's important to point out that even though we don't know what we're doing, we're still committed to publishing. And sometimes that's the best way to learn, right? You just get in there and start rowing the boat, and then eventually you realize how to use the oar, or how to steer the boat, or how to stop, or whatever it may be. So it's been a wild ride, and I'm thankful that we have people still listening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Well, as everybody knows, we take 2 months off between seasons, so we're coming back from our little bit of time off. Kyle, how did your time off treat you? We know during season 5, you were renovating quite a bit in your condo. Did you get to enjoy the finished product, or not quite yet?
Yeah, no, it's really incredible. I'm so happy with it. And I had my final inspection from the city like right at the beginning of our break. So it's been kind of a load off. I haven't been thinking about scheduling and contractors coming and all that stuff. I have been able to enjoy it. So
that's probably good timing, especially considering summers are busy seasons for Riders Taxi, and thankfully, in many cases, you've been able to do in-person events again this year.
I had my first trip traveling to Northern California. Recently, we had a live in-person event in Chicago, and that was great. You know, it was about half as big as it's been in the past, but it was really awesome to just get people back together and start the momentum going again into our event season.
Sure. Yeah, but even though numbers might be smaller, I'm sure it was a great time for the folks that were able to come, and very invigorating and special to connect.
Absolutely, yeah. It's hard to overestimate that connection you feel when you're actually in the same space as somebody else. Yeah, it was really incredible. How was your time off?
It was okay. Or it was fine. I don't know. It was not the best time off, that's for sure. But I was relieved to not have the pressure of recording. I guess, side note, a lot of people that maybe follow me on social media or whatever know that my family has been through quite a bit in the last year or so. My brother was paralyzed from the waist down, and his recovery still is up and down. And then my mom lost her husband right at the end of May, so just as we were wrapping up season 5. So that's been, thankfully surrounded by great people, and we're certainly loved, and mom especially. So we're working through it, but it's a lot of pressure mixed in with a lot of busy work and the emotional pain and turmoil of losing a loved one, so it was good timing in that I was able to give my family a lot of attention and spend a lot of time either on the road with them or on the phone with them. So that part's been good, and I'm thankful for that. But I was going to say, during our time off, I think I got at least 3 comments, whether it was an email or a text, from people that missed hearing our voices on Monday mornings. And there's nothing more rewarding than a text like that. So thank you very much.
That's a good point. I got a few of those too, and it feels really good to know that people actually like to listen to us.
I agree. I'm grateful people continue to listen and subscribe. This season, we're going to introduce a new segment very similar to Season 5 in our Top 5. However, this time we're going to choose a category, and we're going to identify our top pick for Season 6. So Kyle and I will share our top picks during this season. This episode, we have chosen the podcast category, and Kyle is going to share with us his top pick.
So, as you know, I am an avid listener of the Adam Carolla Show, and he was on the radio when I lived in Sacramento, and I've just been listening for a long time. Adam Carolla is known for his rants and just being pissed off about certain things in his life, and it's funny. Ultimately, he's humorous about all this stuff. But I noticed that his ideals and his way of talking about things were infiltrating my thoughts. And I started to realize that if I don't listen to that show, then, it's more of me in my thoughts instead of someone else. So I started listening to the Conan O'Brien podcast called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, and it's just silly. That his main thing in life is just to be silly and obviously he talks about some deeper stuff when guests come on, but really ultimately it's just silly and funny. So I really enjoy coming home and turning that on and just turning off my brain and just listening to someone be ridiculous for a few hours.
Nice. I've got a couple of podcasts in my lineup, but lately my top pick has been At the Table with Patrick Lencioni. I've always listened to many self-help, self-improvement sort of growth related podcasts and content. What I've enjoyed about Patrick Lencioni and his podcast, he's got a couple of co-hosts that join him. What I've enjoyed about it is they are really driven on improvement in the business world. So they talk a lot about teams and groups and, of course, business. I've been able to take a couple things here and there, and I just love Patrick. He's a squirrely personality, always type A, like always moving, always going, always talking, talks fast, has a million fantastic ideas, and he ties that in with a bit of humor and his commitment to being the best version of himself and helping CEOs and large companies be the best versions of themselves. So although I'm not running a company or, I'm not really in that space of growing a business, I've really enjoyed their principles and a lot of the themes they bring to the table. So that one is called At the Table with Patrick Lencioni. He's one of those John Maxwell types. He's written probably 100 books or something. Maybe, I don't know about how many, but a ton.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that, solid principles, they apply all across the board, from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies all the way down to schmucks like you and me, If it's a strong principle, it applies to everything.
And I like what you said in the beginning. The discipline of just doing it is going to help it get better. And for me, I have found the discipline in listening to others and reading and whatever else I can just kind of helps feed our perspectives, our opinions, our understandings, and all of it just makes us better people and helps us understand the world a little bit differently, which in turn allows us to be better individuals ourselves.
Yeah, and I love the learning through a podcast because partly you're enjoying it, right? And so your guard is down and you're open to learning because it's just fun sometimes. So yeah, I like that.
I am a little bummed though. I moved in December, and so now I'm probably 3 miles from my office. So I rarely get podcast time anymore. I still make it work, like when I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
Still listen to stuff when I'm working out or maybe on the bike trail, but I don't have the 20-minute commute anymore, which was kind of a big deal for me. It was valuable time.
Are you able to get podcasts like through the speakers of your car? I have an old car, so I'm not able to do that.
Yeah, that's called Bluetooth technology. I don't know if you've heard of it.
My van is a 2008. I don't think they really had Bluetooth. Or maybe
they did, but it wasn't that popular back then. I feel like today Bluetooth is one of those standard options, but that probably didn't start until somewhere around there, 2008, 2010. I don't know. My last car didn't have it, and when I upgraded it a few years ago, not only did I get the fancy Bluetooth, but the car kind of beeps at me if I go outside the lane line.
Oh, yeah.
I have a backup camera. All stuff that, my last car, my last car didn't even have a steering wheel. It had a joystick. No, I'm kidding. That was stupid.
Crazy. It Bluetooth to your phone. That's how you controlled the car.
Yeah, it's weird. All right, Kyle, today you've chosen a bit of a mesh of talking points. So why don't you share with our listeners some of what inspired what we're talking about today?
Yeah. I had a few experiences this summer that I wanted to talk about and just sort of dissect together. I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but it took me a long time this year to dial in my trike. Usually there's a period, of a couple weeks. I take it into the bike shop and then I listen a little bit of it back and forth as I ride and figure out what's wrong, and then we fix it up, and then it's dialed in for the season. So I took my trike in during the winter, and I drove 2 hours to take it to the shop, and I paid a couple $100. There was a problem with the shifter that I didn't really notice, so I didn't get that fixed at the time. In the end of May, I took it in. I was going to ride a Century with some friends, 100 miles on June 5th. And so I took it in to get the shifter fixed, and they told me that I would have to get a new shifter. And I took it in on a Tuesday, and the guy looked in his little computer, and he's like, oh, it should be in like Friday, I think it should probably be in. And I was going to do the Century the following Saturday. So that would give plenty of time. So Friday comes, and I called the shop, and I'm like, hey, just wanted to get an update. Oh, sorry, the part won't be in until Tuesday. Okay, so I wait till Tuesday, and I called him, and he tells me he's sorry, but the part won't be in till next April. So I'm like, oh my gosh, and I literally can't ride my trike without this new shifter. So I'm freaking out a little bit, and I'm really pissed that the guy told me twice that it would be in the near term. And then all of a sudden, it's, 6 months from now when it's going to be in. So I was very agitated, and he could hear that on the phone. And so this one day I was on the phone with him after he had told me it won't be until April. And he sets the phone down, but he didn't hang up. And I should have hung up. But I kept listening, and he didn't realize he didn't hang up the phone. And I could hear someone say, "How'd that go?" And he says, "Oh, it's that guy in the wheelchair that is really difficult."
Oh, wow.
And so, like, that's not super offensive because he's not wrong. But he wouldn't have said it if he knew I was listening, right?
So wait, you're saying he's not wrong. You recognize that you're a difficult person.
I recognized that I was being difficult in those moments because I was feeling the pressure of, oh my gosh, I need to ride my trike, right? For the century.
Okay. But I've got a timeout here. We'll pick up your story right there. Yeah. The guy sets the phone down and says, "It's that one guy that's difficult." So that suggests to me that maybe they both would agree, like in the past, you've been difficult.
Right.
How do you respond to that?
So this is a new shop that I had never been to before I started trying to solve this shifter problem, because I just moved to this space, right? And like, this is a shop that's right near here. So I had never been in there before. And the first time I went in,
Interesting.
Well, I went in person after he told me that it would be in April. And I was really agitated to the point that other people in the shop easily would have noticed it, right? And I was going, okay, how can you help me solve this? Like, we need to get this done. And so everybody else knew that I was that guy.
Okay.
So
he says this, and you hear him. He doesn't realize you heard him.
Yeah, and I think that really spoke to me too, because I don't always hang up my phone when I end a conversation. I just set it down, right? Like, we get in that habit, and I know that has really taught me that I have to hang up. As I said, he wasn't like talking smack, but he certainly wouldn't have said that if he knew I was listening.
Sure.
So the part was not going to get in until next year, 2022. And it just points to all the supply chain issues in so many different areas of life, but especially the bike industry has really suffered from supply chain issues. So I called Catrike and I was like, I'm riding a Century next week. I need this part. And they're hit just as hard with supply chain issues, right? And so they're trying to figure stuff out right now too. But they graciously sent a shifter to this bike shop and got it installed 2 days before I was to ride this Century. And it was an awesome day. One of my friends came up. He's got a son with FA, and he lives in Baltimore. And he came up and rode with us, and we had like 6 guys that rode that day. So
what you're telling everybody listening is that you've got strings to pull, and this bike shop doesn't. Like, how did that conversation go when you went back to them and said, actually, it'll be here tomorrow, so can you install it? Like, they had to be sort of rubbed funny, because they're just playing by the rules, and you're not. So,
right.
How did that go?
No, I think he was, the conversation I had with him was, he tells me it won't be until April. And I say, all right, well, let me see what I can do. And he obviously he didn't know what that meant, right? Yeah, I said I was going to call
Yeah.
CATRAC and I was going to see if they could send one. And he had, he was like, yeah, whatever. That's going to happen, right?
Sure.
And then, I call back and, it's going to be here in 2 days. Can you guys install it? So, yeah, that was a close one. Very, very close one. But saved by CATRAC.
Nice.
The point of the story, though, is, I wanted to talk about some observations of the effect that the pandemic has had on our world and what we're seeing right now. Even though we seem to be emerging a little bit, it looks like we may be heading back in some areas because of the Delta variant. But, I've had a few observations, and one of them is this supply chain issue that has been prevalent, like I said, in the bike industry and a lot of other areas too. And so I just kind of wanted to see if you've seen that issue in other areas.
Of course, but I'm not done with your bike shop story. So, is this still your bike shop? Like, are you going to go back to them?
Well, yeah, I think I will because, and you know what's funny is that I haven't dealt with that guy again. And then every time I go in there, he doesn't give me the time of day because, so I called back. So this relates to your question before. I said, I'm really sorry for being difficult. And I intentionally used the word difficult because that's what he said. And, the part's going to be in soon. So can you guys install it? And something tells me that he realized that I heard what he said because he hasn't spoken another word to me since. And every time I go in there, he doesn't really give me the time of day because I think he might know that I heard him talking about me. So,
so now maybe he's embarrassed or he just straight up doesn't care.
He hates me even more.
So back to your question on supply chain or supply and demand for me. Of course, I've noticed quite a bit. I would imagine most of our listeners have. Thankfully for me, and I guess for you too, you bought your condo before things got out of hand, hopefully. And I'm definitely not in the market of buying a house right now. So that's been nice because, that's the big one. If you're buying, you're going to pay through the nose. Like, everything is expensive. Construction, wood, steel, everything is pricey. So, personally, it's been kind of nice, even though inflation is not that fun right now. I've been still just dropping my money in the bank and, paying off debt and doing little things here and there. So, I feel like, although this might delay the purchase process for me by a year or two, or maybe longer, depending on how the economy flushes out, I'm okay. I've been okay with it. Sure, gas prices suck.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I live in California, and the way I understand it, California has the highest gas prices. So that's been fun. So I guess all that to say, I'm gonna leave California someday. I don't know when. It might be 20 years from now, but I don't see myself living here forever.
My NorCal trip took me to the Bay Area, and I saw prices that were like $4.35 a gallon or something. Is that? Yeah. What is it in Sacramento?
We're right at 4 right now. Maybe $3.95 on a good day. Maybe $4.09.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're over 4 most days right now.
Wow. One of my other observations is when I was traveling, and it was at the hotel and also at a couple of different restaurants. I noticed that the service lately is really affected by not having enough people. They just don't have people to work. And so, the service at the hotels and the restaurants is really slow. And I was wondering, you work in retail at a grocery store, and I was wondering if you guys have had difficulty hiring too.
Oh my gosh. We can't hire. It's, we are hiring in. Most of our locations have upwards of 20 vacancies. It has been difficult to find people that are ready to work and willing to work.
So what do you attribute that to? What do you see? What do you think is the issue, Sean? And I don't want to get political, but I just kind of wanted to pick your brain and see what you think.
Yeah, personally, I think it's a handful of things. I feel like most people, at least from what I've heard on some news channels or, just word of mouth, I feel like most people blame unemployment or the fact that there's a lot of money available, whether it's from your state or a federal, added stimulus, if you will, or added unemployment benefit. There's a name for it, but I forget what they're calling it. And California is one of those states that's doing both. So we're still taking the federal money for unemployment and giving that to folks, and then California is still doing the regular unemployment. I think half our states by now have said no to the federal, right, and said leave us alone. We gotta get our people back to work. So I do think there's an element of that, especially maybe for younger folks, younger generations of people. I'm sure that plays a part. Although I'm not convinced that's the only reason. Right. I really do think a lot of people are timid about getting back out in the public and constantly being around complete strangers every day, especially if you're talking restaurants or retail. You're dealing with 100 or 200 people, different people every day. Mm-hmm. And that can be nerve-wracking, especially you mentioned the Delta variant. Right. Like, things are not going away. Even outside of COVID-19, the common colds, flus, all these germs that are floating around, that could compromise anybody. So I do think there's some hesitancy there, and I think that's legit. But I also think there's probably some legitimate concern to folks that are having to care for other people. So whether it be an elderly parent or a child, maybe they're not comfortable putting their kid back in public school. So that means they have to stay home and take care of their children.
They have to be a teacher.
Yeah. Or they've got to find the money to pay a babysitter or whatever. So I think, again, personally, I'm not an economist. I don't follow everything. But I would say those three are at the top of the list. The benefits from unemployment, the legitimate concern about somebody's health or exposure, and, of course, the challenge in managing our home lives if our kids or other people that depend on us can't get back into a quote-unquote normal routine every day.
Right, yeah. I think it's probably just, in life, there's just never one thing that causes anything, right? Every single situation is complicated and nuanced, and I think you summarized it, with three of the big reasons that this may be happening.
Oh, another thing I've heard quite a bit on the news, and I heard a statistic not too long ago. I want to say either 40-something or 60-something. It's just over halfway or just under, either way you look at it, of people taking the opportunity right now to pivot their own career. So although you've got some lifelong servers, like they just love the restaurant industry and they're really good at serving folks and they love the flexibility restaurant life gives them, right now there's an incredible opportunity to walk away from that career and go start a whole new career, like in nursing or in go back to school and be a lawyer or whatever it may be, or stay home and make crafts and sell your own stuff and go into business for yourself. So I really do believe that's a large factor too. It's not so much that people don't want to work. Maybe it's that people are taking the opportunity to rediscover what they really want to do or what contribution they want to make to society and the workforce. So I'm going to call those my top 4 reasons.
All right. So one other thing I noticed the other day, and I was just cracking up, is that I was in a grocery store, and I've seen this a few times. You know, in the beginning or during the height of the pandemic, and there was a mask mandate like everywhere, right? And this was a thing, like you would occasionally see somebody without the mask covering their nose. And it's like, okay, why even wear a mask at that point, right? What do you like? And so, you know, in many places, the mask mandate has lifted. And I was in the grocery store the other day, and I got a mask on, and masks are great. Like I've worn a mask a couple times. I went through a cold a couple weeks ago, and I was wearing a mask everywhere. It was not COVID. I did find that out, but anyway, I'm walking through the grocery store, and there's a guy with a mask on, and it's not covering his nose. And I'm like, okay, why even wear a mask at that point? Like, we don't have to anymore, and it's not even covering the air that's coming out of your body. Like, so I was just going, what?
If you're not going to do it right, why do it at all? You know, I guess I was just thinking, you know, seatbelts, I don't know when those became a law, but I feel like it was just in the 80s or 90s, right? I don't think they were always required. But, you know, some people take the seatbelt strap and just put it under their arm. So if a cop drives by, it looks like they're wearing their seatbelt. So I get it if you're that guy, like you just want to play the part so you don't get a ticket. But that sort of punishment or enforcement doesn't exist with mask wearing, right? We've heard it everywhere. Nobody's really enforcing it unless you get on an airplane or go to the airport. But I think you make a good point. Like, why wear it at all if you know you don't have to? I don't know. I guarantee you, Kyle, we're pissing somebody off right now. They're listening in the car and they're like, "What do you do, schmucks? No, I like my chin guard. Don't talk to me or whatever." So, I mean, to each their own. But I do think it's a valid question.
I was cracking up to myself when I saw this the other day.
Well, we have successfully killed 40 minutes or so, and like always, beginning of a season, we really didn't talk about anything valuable. I don't think we helped anybody in their pursuit of becoming better people today.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hope...
Sometimes you just gotta...
Yeah, and I'm just going to hope we're maybe entertaining, or if somebody is just glad to hear our voices again. Although I could be wrong.
You know, I turn the radio on a lot. You know, I live alone, and I just... It's a nice little companion in the room. It doesn't matter what they're saying, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, you make a good point. I sometimes listen to, or I should say, I often listen to talk radio. And I often don't agree with the particular station I listen to. But I listen to them to get a glimpse of the other perspective. I do think it helps me be a little more well-rounded.
Yeah.
So there are times where they're just yapping in the background, and I kind of forget they're there.
Yeah.
Then they'll say something that bugs me, and I'm like, all right, new station.
Oh, my gosh. I did that experiment, and I lost all faith in media because I listened to NPR and then immediately followed that by like checking out, all right, what are they saying on Fox? And it was just completely opposite. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a middle ground somewhere, but neither of them are talking about it. And I don't know. I just, every media outlet has their spin, right? And
totally. Yeah.
I think it's really tough to figure out what the heck is going on sometimes. Sean, thank you for the rambling conversation. We need to wrap this up, and I think we should wrap it up with a little gratitude like we usually do. So who do you have to thank this week?
I'm saying thank you today to my Aunt Teresa and my Uncle Rich. Teresa is my mom's sister, and then of course Rich is her husband. Gosh, I don't know how long they've been married. I do remember being at the wedding though. So I want to say 25, maybe 30 old. Some odd years. Yeah, I am. They are incredible staples, especially to my mom's side of the family. My mom's side, they lost their both their brothers. The oldest brother died 10 years ago or so. Like, he lived a full life but died of cancer. Their little brother died when they were young, like 20. He was in a car accident. And then both parents have since passed. So really, my Aunt Teresa has been an incredible source of encouragement and strength. And the three sisters, my Aunt Janice too, they all just lean on each other and keep each other well grounded. They live all over. One's in Washington, my mom's in Nevada, and Teresa's out in Georgia. So they don't get to see each other often. When my mom lost her husband a few months ago, my Aunt Teresa and Uncle Rich, they're retired. They drove out, and they probably spent 4 or 5 weeks at my mom's. And their whole purpose was to, just be company, to eat breakfast with her and play games and go to the store with her and whatever. But also to help her around the house. My mom probably sits on an acre or so, and every morning they got up early, they planted trees, they tore out trees, they painted, they threw down some rocks, and they got rid of dirt, and just all kinds of stuff to help relieve my mom of some of that pressure of just feeling like a lot's undone. And it was such an incredible source of love and encouragement and help for my mom. And of course for me, just knowing that they were there keeping her company and helping her around the house. So a big thank you to my Aunt Teresa and Uncle Rich. They are avid listeners to our podcast. They even have shirts. Maybe a hat.
Oh my gosh.
But they are fans.
Nice. Not only is it incredible to be able to have them there in this case for you, Sean, but you said that they've been around for a long time. They've been together for a long time, and I'm sure they've been in your life and active in your life for a long time. And that's just an incredible example for all of us and support for your family. So that I like that. Thank you. Yeah.
For sure.
My thank you note goes out to our friend Andra. She, right when we both got vaccinated, she came and visited. And that was the time when my construction had just finished, and there were a bunch of walls that were not painted yet. And so she helped me paint, and she helped me put a few things on the wall here in my podcast studio. So I really just thank Andra for that. It's something that I obviously couldn't do myself. And she was like, all right, let's turn to music on and get this done. So it was fun, giving each other crap the whole time and stuff. So,
of course. Well, as always, we are grateful for you as well for listening today, especially to this particular episode where we just ramble. We do have some cool interviews lined up for you during season 6. Lots of fun stuff coming up, so we hope that you stick around for this season and help us celebrate 5 years of doing this podcast with you and for you. We'd encourage you to check out our show notes. We will link, at the very least, the podcast that Kyle and I both recommend that you check out. Please share and subscribe. Continue telling the world how much you love Kyle and Sean. And we look forward to another incredible season with you. We'll catch you next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.